Coronation Street's Jodie Ramsey returns to the Platt house tonight following her moonlight flit last week. When her attempt to seduce her brother-in-law David backfired, the shifty character knocked Sarah unconscious and fled the scene. After learning about her disappearance, Shona feared Jodie had been kidnapped by the thugs from the haulage company who had previously threatened her. However, viewers recently saw the schemer lurking around the precinct, confirming she is alive and well. In tonight's episode, Jodie finally shows her face at the house, with a relieved Shona desperate to know where she has been. Jodie immediately tells her she had been taken by the thugs and kept in a lockup. "They put a bag over my head. I was tied up the whole time," she lies, explaining that they thought she had other evidence that could incriminate them. "When I finally convinced them that I didn't, I swore they'd have no more trouble if they just let me go," she tearfully tells her sympathetic sister. The pair quickly make up over that misunderstanding with David, and Shona assures Jodie that she trusts both of them. However, David is less enthused to find Jodie on his sofa, and when she blames the thugs for Sarah's attack, he urges her to tell the police. Jodie protests David's idea, claiming that it will land them all in danger, but he insists she tells them something as DC Kit Green has been asking questions about the attack. Later, Jodie tells another huge lie about her disappearance as Kit is taking a statement. She tells him she felt awkward after the incident with David and went on a bender for days. When Kit asks why the police found her blood on the coffee table, Jodie shows him her bandaged hand, saying she broke a glass and cut herself. She insists she has no idea who hit Sarah, claiming she didn't see or hear anything. While Jodie seems to be in the clear with the police, David is reluctant to have her back in the house. In upcoming scenes, she decides to break into Daniel Osborne's flat for a place to stay, leading to an unlikely friendship between the pair. Coronation Street, Jodie's web of lies deepens after shock return. The early morning mist still clung to Weatherfield as the cobbles slowly came to life. But inside one small terraced house, tension was already boiling over. Jodie Ramsey was back, and trouble had returned with her. No one quite knew where she had been during her sudden disappearance, and that alone made the residents uneasy. But what they didn't know was that Jodie hadn't come back to make peace. She had come back with secrets and lies. The first lie, the missing truth. It started innocently enough, or so it seemed. Shona Platt had barely had time to process her sister's return before Jodie slipped back into family life as if nothing had happened. She smiled too quickly, laughed too loudly, and hugged too tightly. It was almost convincing. But David Platt noticed something off immediately. "You don't just disappear for weeks and come back acting like a changed woman," he muttered to Shona one evening in the kitchen. Shona defended her sister, insisting she was just going through something. But even she wasn't entirely convinced. Jodie's first lie came that same night. When Shona gently asked where she had been, Jodie didn't hesitate. "I was with a friend down south. Needed space. That's all." It sounded simple. Clean. Believable. But David caught the flicker in her eyes. There had been no friend. No South Coast retreat. Nothing. Later that night, he quietly checked her social media history, nothing. No photos, no tagged locations, no digital footprint of any kind. "That's not someone who's been on a break," he whispered. "That's someone hiding something." The second lie, the stolen identity. The following day, things escalated. At Weatherfield General, where Shona was visiting for a routine checkup following baby Harper's recovery, Jodie took things too far. When a nurse mistook her for a family member filling out paperwork, Jodie didn't correct her. Instead, she smiled and nodded. "I'm the mother," she said calmly. The nurse handed her forms without question. Shona arrived moments later and froze. "What are you doing?" she hissed. But Jodie didn't panic. She didn't flinch. "I was just helping." "You were late." It was the second lie, but this one felt different. Heavier. Deliberate. David arrived shortly after and immediately sensed the shift in the room. Something had changed in Jodie's behavior. It wasn't just deception anymore, it was control. "You told them you were Harper's mom," he said flatly later in the corridor. Jodie shrugged. "It was easier." "Easier for who?" David snapped. But Jodie had already moved on. She was smiling again, charming again, slipping back into her role within the family like a mask that never quite fitted. The growing suspicion. Over the next few days, Jodie's behavior became harder to ignore. She began collecting small, meaningless items from the Platt household, keys, photographs, even a child's bracelet that no one remembered her touching. When confronted, she dismissed it all as tidying up. But Shona was beginning to worry. "She's not herself," she admitted to David one night. "But I don't know who she is anymore." David nodded. "That's because she's showing us two versions of herself. Neither of them are real." Meanwhile, Jodie was becoming more secretive. Late-night phone calls. Whispered conversations. Quick exits when questioned. And then came the discovery that changed everything. The hidden box. While searching for misplaced documents in Jodie's room, Shona stumbled across something tucked beneath loose floorboards. A box. Small. Wooden. Locked. Inside were items that didn't belong together, old photographs, hospital wristbands, train tickets, and a single, folded newspaper clipping with parts cut out. Shona's hands trembled. David joined her moments later, staring at the contents in silence. "She's been keeping things," he said quietly. "Not keepsakes," Shona replied. "Evidence." That was the moment everything clicked into place. Jodie hadn't just returned with lies. She had returned with a plan. The final lie, the truth about Shona. The confrontation came that evening. Shona stood in the living room, box in hand, as Jodie entered from the kitchen humming softly. "We need to talk," Shona said. Jodie glanced at the box and smiled faintly. "Oh, you found it." David stepped forward. "What is all this?" Jodie tilted her head. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke slowly. "You really think you know your life, don't you, Shona?" Silence. "You think this is your family? Your house? Your story?" Shona frowned. "What are you talking about?" Jodie walked closer, her voice softer now, but sharper. "You were never supposed to have it all." "Not really. I just came back to remind you of that." The room froze. Shona shook her head. "That's not true." But Jodie's smile widened. "Isn't it?" That was the final lie, and the most dangerous one. Because this time, it wasn't just deception. It was something deeper. Something personal. The fallout. Within hours, the Platts were divided. David wanted Jodie out immediately. Shona refused to believe her sister could be anything more than troubled. But the evidence was stacking up, and the lies were no longer small enough to ignore. Even Bernie and others on the street began noticing strange behavior, Jodie watching people too closely, remembering things she shouldn't, and always collecting something. By morning, the atmosphere on the cobbles had changed. Jodie stood outside Roy's Rolls, staring through the window as if studying every detail. And for the first time since her return, she looked completely alone. But not lost. Not confused. Calculated. Because Jodie Ramsey wasn't finished. And the worst lie she had ever told was still waiting to be revealed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Coronation.